All right. So, welcome to the Sweaty Startup. I am super excited about this episode. I talk often about how real estate should be the end goal of almost every entrepreneur. Jay, I know you feel the same way. I'm here with Jay Scott. He is an author of many books that are, mostly oriented in the residential and multifamily real estate, flipping, buying, negotiating. He's a BiggerPockets host. I met Jay because he interviewed me for BiggerPockets Business, which is an awesome podcast. They're getting some big time guests. Jay, you've been involved in BiggerPockets now for 6 or 7 years as a writer and a contributor on all the platforms. Really excited to have you on.
Hey, how's it going, Nick? I'm really thrilled to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So you started in real estate. I want to get to the timing of that, which was fall of 2008 eventually here. But I'd love to hear your story of what your specialty was before that, what your career was before that, and then how you became an entrepreneur.
Yeah, absolutely. So my wife and I first started in the tech space. So we were in the corporate world, both living in California, doing the corporate thing, the tech thing. And in 2006, we met. We dated for a couple of years. Late 2007, we decided to get married. Now, my wife was working probably 80, 100 hours a week. She was traveling 3.5 weeks a month. I was working the 60, 80 hours a week, and I was traveling a couple of weeks a month. And so we literally barely ever saw each other. I mean, she jokes about the fact that like we would high five each other in the airport as we were passing each other by. She coming home, me leaving, or the other way around. So when we decided to get married and start a family, we realized that lifestyle just wasn't conducive to having a family. So she always wanted to kind of do the stay-at-home mom thing when she had kids. I'm big on don't want to miss the piano recitals, the baseball games, the whatever it is, the first words, the first steps. So we decided early on, before we even got married, that the only way it was going to work was if either one or both of us gave up our jobs. And we didn't really want to have to make the decision which one was going to work, which one wasn't going to work. We love working together. We actually met at eBay. We worked together at eBay. And so we wanted to keep working together. So we decided early on that we were going to leave our tech jobs. We're going to leave Silicon Valley, move back east, and we were going to start a quote unquote lifestyle business, some business where we could kind of put the family first. We could still make some income. We could still support ourselves. But basically our business would come second to our family. So
you decided on this before you decided that you were going to start the business before you knew exactly what you were going to be doing.
Absolutely. Yeah. We had no idea what we were going to do. It was April of 2008. We had both quit our jobs. We moved to Atlanta and we said, we're going to take the summer and kind of figure out what we want to do with our lives, what our next business is going to be, or I guess what our first business is going to be. And then we were getting married on August 8th of 2008. And so the goal was by August of 2008, we figure out what we want to do, we get married, and then we go start the lifestyle business. So we're sitting there over the summer in Atlanta, and my wife is flipping through the TV stations. We're still trying to figure out what we want to do. And she flips on HGTV. And for anybody that was watching TV back in 2008, especially if you were watching like HGTV, the only thing they had on were flip shows. Everybody was flipping houses. That's all people were talking about. The downturn had already started, but all these TV shows were still on. And my wife said to me, let's flip a house. I thought she was joking because literally I didn't know how to change a light bulb. And when I say I didn't know, I literally, I guess I shouldn't use the word literally, but almost didn't know how to change a light bulb. I had an electrical engineering degree, but I mean, it was all theory. I didn't know how to do any contracting stuff. I didn't know how to do any carpentry. I didn't know how to use tools. Like I was the last person anybody would think would be flipping a house. But she said, let's flip a house. I said, okay, let's give it a try. We're not doing anything else for the next few months until our wedding. So let's go try and flip a house. So jumped online, did some research, tried to figure out what this whole flipping thing was about. I'm a numbers guy. I'm very quantitative. So for me, it wasn't, let's just go give it a try, see what happens. I really wanted to understand the theory. I wanted to understand the numbers. I wanted to be able to do a good analysis because that's like, I wasn't going to do this unless I was serious about it. So we spent the summer learning about flipping houses, her just thinking about like doing the house design and the purchase and the sale. She loves marketing. She loves sales. She loves design. And come like late July, we found our first house. We actually found 3 houses. And so we couldn't decide which house that we wanted to purchase. So we bought all 3 houses. We closed on our first house literally the day we got married. So August 8th, 2008, we closed on our first house. And within about 3 weeks, we closed on the other 2. So in the first month, we bought 3 houses, never flipped a house before, didn't know anything, whatever. So within the first 2 months, we realized we are way in over our heads, but we own 3 houses and we just kept plowing forward. And the first deal was kind of, let's just say this. If we hadn't have bought 3 houses at once, we probably wouldn't have bought a second one after that first deal. But we had 2 more to go. We learned a lot on the first one. It helped us on the second one, helped us on the third one. And by the time we finished that third flip, I think we both decided, hey, this could be the lifestyle business we were looking for. This could be a way that we could continue to support ourselves. We could grow a business, but we could still put our family first. And little did we know that 10 years later, we would have flipped several hundred houses. We'd have written several books. We'd be doing a business podcast. We'd be doing all kinds of other stuff related to real estate and business. But just serendipity, it all worked out.
Yeah, they say it's all about momentum, right? It's starting small, doing something. And this is kind of the definition of a sweaty startup. The interesting thing here is that you documented the entire journey on 123flip.com. Very open book, financial picture of everything that you were doing. And, it was humble beginnings, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm big on accountability. And I like I said, I'm quantitative. I like to know my numbers. I like to hold myself accountable and really not just, I don't do things off the cuff. And it's probably hurt me over the years because I tend to be a little bit more conservative than I should be. And my wife always laughs at me about the fact that we probably could have been 10 times more successful if I weren't so conservative. But it served me well. And so, yeah, back in 2008, I started a blog called 123flip where I essentially was documenting our real estate journey. And I look back now and I was talking about buying, when I started the blog, it had nothing to do with flipping houses. We were talking about buying multifamily real estate, passive investing, maybe doing syndications or just buying for cash flow. We had never even thought about doing the active flipping houses thing. And so early on, first few months of the blog was all about multifamily real estate and rental real estate and how to analyze those types of deals and our business plan for that. And then once we got that first flip under contract, we kind of switched gears and I started writing about the flips, and literally every day we would take pictures or video. I documented our numbers in gory detail, basically just holding ourselves accountable. So if we lost lots of money, people would see it. If we made lots of money, we could help other people and inspire other people. We could document our successes, we could document our failures, and it would allow me to kind of go back and if we stuck with it, I could basically use that blog as an accountability tool and a way for me to kind of improve the process because I was documenting the process each step of the way. And ultimately, I think that blog, not only did it help other people, thankfully I had so much great feedback, but it helped us in our business as well because it really allowed us to go back after a couple months, a couple years, and to tweak our processes because we saw and remembered all the things we had done wrong and all the things we had done right, and we could continuously improve our business.
Yeah, the interesting thing about this is the timing. I mean, what was the recession or the correction, I should say, upon us by the time you bought your first one? It seems like it wasn't until September, late fall of 2008. So you lived right along the downswing and then on up.
Yeah, so I that's one thing, and I'll never sugarcoat this. We were tremendously fortunate in our timing. We left our jobs right after the big market crash in February 2008, and so by summer of 2008, we were the recession was in full swing, and we were in Atlanta, which was one of the hardest hit areas in the country. I mean, literally, you drive down the street, and 7 out of 10 houses in our neighborhood were foreclosures or for sale because people couldn't afford to make payments. It was absolutely unbelievable, the number of houses for sale. And for us, had we known more, it probably would have been enough to scare us away from the business. Luckily, we went in pretty naive and we said, okay, well, all these houses for sale, we can pick up cheap houses. And it didn't occur to us until we actually started trying to sell those houses, how difficult it would be to sell on the back end. But this is one of the things I've learned over the years in real estate. There's never what's referred to as a perfect time. I know a lot of people look for that perfect time to jump into real estate investing, but in reality, there are going to be buyer's markets and seller's markets. And if it's a buyer's market, it's probably easy to buy and difficult to sell. If it's a seller's market, it's probably difficult to buy and easy to sell. And so you're unlikely to ever get both of those at the same time. So that's why I tell people, just jump in when you feel like you have the knowledge and the skills to jump in, because there's never a perfect time. So we jumped in 2008, really easy to buy. We were literally, I mean, you could open up the MLS, you could throw a dart at the MLS, and whatever it hit was probably a good deal, because it was probably a foreclosure. You could buy it really cheap. The hard part was reselling on the back end. Luckily, my wife is brilliant at marketing. She's brilliant at building relationships. She's a great designer. She's a great stager. So she essentially was the one that made our business successful, because she handled everything on the back end. Once the rehab was done, through getting it sold and closed, that was her job, and she did that tremendously well. But it turns out that 2008 was a great time to start flipping houses. Obviously, there were still difficulties, but we didn't have a lot of competition. Most of the big flippers had gone out of business in 2006 and 7, or 2007 and 8, I should say. And so, it was smooth sailing.
Yeah. So we talk all the time about fear, and especially right now, a lot of people are afraid to buy. Before we dive into that, though, I noticed on your bio that it said creative financing. You're a specialist when it comes to creative financing. So talk about financing some of those early deals. And, a lot of real estate investors or people who are interested in getting into that field haven't necessarily taken the leap because they can't find out how to put together the deal. So just talk about how creative you can really get. In my business, we got super creative. We didn't want to tie up any of our money. We went out and we just put together a deal by sitting down at people's kitchen tables and figuring out how it was a win-win for the people who had the money and the people who were going to be willing to do the work, like me. Talk about how you put together your deals. I'm sure you had some money saved up from your time in California,
Yep.
But how did it look from your end?
Yeah. And so this is something that I've definitely learned having the business podcast, talking to you and a whole lot of other investors. I mean, the thing that we see over and over and over again is that many of the most successful investors bootstrap themselves. They didn't come in with a ton of money. They didn't get an inheritance or a loan from their family or raise venture capital. They basically bootstrapped. They started with nothing and they built slowly and they just kept the momentum going. And we were lucky that we did have some money saved, but we grew quickly and we quickly outgrew our savings. I mean, we paid cash for our first 2 deals. No, I'm sorry. We paid cash for our first deal. We put in a little over $100,000 into our first deal. And after that, we were pretty uncomfortable because that deal took 2.5 years to sell. That was the tough one. So we had $100K locked up in a property for about 2.5 years, and we were pretty opposed to putting a bunch more cash in. So on our second deal, we used conventional financing. We basically went to a bank and I don't want to say we lied, but they were under the impression we were buying a rental property, not a flip. They were not happy when we flipped the property. We didn't do anything illegal, but had they known it was a flip, they probably wouldn't have financed it. Our third property, we used a portfolio lender, which is a small local bank that kind of lends their own funds and makes their own underwriting rules. And we started building a relationship with small local banks. The fourth deal, I think we used hard money. The fifth deal, we used private lenders. Private lenders are basically friends and family who are lending you money because they trust you. We used kind of every tool there was on those first several flips. And it didn't start out with the goal of let's try everything. But what I realized was on the second deal, when we used conventional financing, it led me to the thought that, hey, there are other options out there besides using my own cash. Let's explore those. And so somebody mentioned portfolio lending. I said, okay, I'm going to give that a try. Somebody mentioned hard money lenders. Okay, I'm going to give that a try. Private lenders, I'm going to give that a try. Creative financing. So on several of our deals, after a couple of years, we started doing what was called creative financing, where you actually get the seller to finance part of your deal. So let's say you have a seller, and this is an interesting fact. About a third of the properties in the US right now are owned free and clear, which means the owners don't have a mortgage on their property. They've paid off their property. They have full equity in their property. And so let's say I want to buy a $100,000 property from somebody who owns their property free and clear. They don't have a mortgage on it. So they have the full $100,000 in equity in the property. I can go to them and I can say, hey, I want you to finance this property for me. I'm going to flip this property, but I don't want to get a bank loan. I want you to give me a loan out of the equity that you have. So I might give them $10,000 down or $15,000 down payment, just like I would on a bank loan. But instead of going and getting a loan They basically lend me the money out of their equity. So at closing, I give them $10,000 or $15,000. They give me a loan for the rest of that money, and they can do that because they don't have to pay off a mortgage. They own it free and clear. I make monthly payments until I sell the house. Then I pay the other $85,000 or $90,000 to them. So basically, I'm doing the same.
Yeah. And their risk is hedged because if you fail, they get their property back.
Right. They're essentially the bank. So they have a what's called a lien on the property, which means if I don't make payments, if I don't do as I promised to do, they can take the property back. The property is worth more than what I owe. If I gave them $10,000 or $15,000 down, if the property is worth $100,000 and I only owe 85, if they take that property back, they actually make some money. So there's very little risk for them. Obviously, it's a pain in the butt to have to foreclose on me. And so that's their risk, just their time and their effort. But from a financial perspective, there's not a whole lot of risk. And so once I realized that this thing called seller financing exists, it kind of opened up a whole new world of creative financing. And there are a whole bunch of different tools that you can use to allow either the seller or a bank or a third party to kind of finance the deal for you in a way that's non-traditional. And so over the years, I've kind of mixed the paying cash, using different types of lenders, and using creative financing in all different ways to make deals work out. And when you have all these tools in your tool belt, what you find is you can get a whole lot more deals to work out because there's a whole lot of different ways you can put those deals together.
I've been very surprised by when I initially tried to go and finance a couple of deals. I thought it was all about the numbers and the cash flow documents and the projections. It's so much about personal relationships, so much, even with the bankers. So I will say that the piece of advice that I would give is it's about sales, like getting in front of them and convincing them that they should trust you, especially the smaller banks where a board is making a decision and they're having a discussion about accepting or declining. And so you were tying down financing at some of the hardest times ever to tie down financing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think if I had to give any piece of advice to any new real estate investor on any topic whatsoever, the first piece of advice I would give is build relationships with your small local banks. And again, these banks, they call them portfolio lenders. Typical big banks, if you go into a Wells Fargo or a Bank of America or a Chase Bank and you try and get a loan, what they're doing is they have this list of guidelines for them to give you a loan. You have to have a certain credit score. You have to have a certain amount of income. You have to have a job for a certain number of years. You have to own your home or rent your home for a certain number of years. They want to see that the property meets certain requirements. And I mean, literally pages and pages. And these are requirements that are given to them by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, two very large institutional investors, semi-owned by the government, because the banks, after they give you a loan, they turn around and they sell those loans to Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac. And in order to sell those loans, they had to have met every one of those criteria for Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac to say, okay, I'm going to buy that loan. Now, you walk into a small local bank, they're not looking to turn around and sell that loan to Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac. They lend out money that their depositors give them, and they hold that loan. So for them, they don't have this long list of underwriting guidelines that somebody else is saying, hey, you need to follow this. They make their own. And so they can say something like, yeah, we normally like to see a 680 credit score, but we've worked with you long enough that we trust you and we're going to let your 640 credit score slide. Or they might say, yeah, typically we only do 4 loans per borrower, but we've had a 5-year relationship with you. You've had money in our bank. You've paid back 10 loans in the past. We're going to let you do 20 loans. They can say things like that. They can look at a deal and say, yeah, this deal is a little bit thinner than what we normally see, but you've got a bunch of money in your bank account. If you let us kind of hold $20,000 in that account that we just kind of freeze, we'll do this thinner deal for you because we know we have some extra collateral. They can make those decisions. And so when you start building those relationships, what you find is these deals that you otherwise might not have been able to do either because you didn't have the financial portfolio or the financial resume, or the deal wasn't necessarily good enough. Suddenly the bank is willing to do those deals because they have the ability to do those deals. They know you, they trust you, and they have that relationship with you. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Love it. Okay. So I get asked all the time because I love real estate. I know you love real estate. We know the power of real estate with the capital gains taxes, the depreciation, the appreciation, and so on. But I get asked all the time how to get started. I don't necessarily have a skill set. I don't have a competitive advantage. And I'm always worried about the risks. I'm always worried about telling people to jump in because I've looked at some markets in major US cities. I see that a lot of international money is getting parked in these properties without any desire for a lot of return. There's a lot of competition to buy these properties. If it's on Zillow, you're looking at a property with 1,000, maybe more people that are interested in buying that. How do you look and source good deals in today's market? I know that that's such a loaded question, and you will write and talk and present on this stuff for hours and hours. But what are some things to keep in mind if you're looking to go buy a single family or multifamily rental property or do a flip?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said before, there's never a perfect time. It's always either going to be easy to buy and tough to sell, or tough to buy and easy to sell. And right now we're in the middle of 2019, and we're at the point in time when it's easy to sell, but it's really tough to buy. There's a lot of competition for deals out there. Prices are inflated. You can't just go ask a real estate agent, hey, send me a list of stuff that's publicly listed on the MLS and find a good deal. You're not going to find good deals that way. So these days, if you want to find good deals, what I'm telling people is you have to be really, really good at what's called marketing acquisition, which is finding deals that other people haven't yet found. If you go and try and find the deals that are publicly listed, if you go to public auctions, if you go onto the MLS, if you go to whatever it is, if you go to the auction sites like Hubzu or auction.com, all of these houses are publicly listed, which means not only you, but all of your competitors, all the millions of other people out there that are looking to buy houses right now are seeing these houses. And all it takes is for one not so good investor to decide, I'm willing to pay way too much for that property. And suddenly you're not going to get that property. All it takes is for one bad investor to be willing to overpay. And suddenly there is absolutely no way you're going to get a good deal, because somebody's going to go and overpay and lose a lot of money, and everybody else is going to lose out on that deal. So what I tell people is you need to go after the deals that nobody yet knows about. And the way you do that is you have to contact people before they decide to sell, or after they decide to sell, but before they've actually taken action to sell. And there are a number of ways to do that. So we talk about things like direct mail, where you send letters to people and you basically say, hi, you might say, hi, I'm new to your neighborhood. I'm looking for houses in your neighborhood. You might say that you flip houses. You might say that you're just looking to buy in that neighborhood. And then say, if you've thought about selling your house, I would love to talk to you and give you an offer. I can pay cash. I can close quickly if that's true. Whatever the spiel is that you want to go into, you put your phone number down there or a website. You hope they contact you, and when they do, you try and negotiate a deal. So somebody gets this letter and they might be thinking, oh, well, I hadn't been thinking about selling my house, but now that this person says they're interested in buying, well, maybe now is a good time to sell. Or I've been thinking about moving to Arkansas, so maybe now is a good time to discuss with this person if they want to buy my house. Or, yeah, I'm getting ready to switch jobs. I'm going to start looking in a different state. Maybe I'll talk to this person. So if you happen to catch them at the right time, there's a chance that they're going to pick up the phone and call you and start talking, and you can negotiate a deal. And unlike all those deals that were on the auction sites or on the MLS or at the county courthouse steps during foreclosure auctions, you have no competition. If you're the first person to contact them, or you're the first person they contact, then it's basically, can you get the deal done? It's not you competing with 20 or 30 or 50 other investors. Now, you might think, okay, so who am I going to contact? So there's a couple things. There's who you're going to contact and how you're going to contact them. Let's start with who you're going to contact. There are all different types of people you can contact. You can contact just regular homeowners. You can decide, I really want to buy in this zip code or this neighborhood, this subdivision, and you can send letters to all the people in that subdivision. Now, if these are just regular homeowners who have no financial issues right now, have not thought about selling, you might not get a lot of response rate. Like you might send 100 letters and get one phone call. But now let's say you send to only the people who are having money problems, people that are behind on their mortgage payments by a month or 2 months or 3 months, or people that are thinking about declaring bankruptcy, or people that have gone through restructuring bankruptcy but haven't done the full bankruptcy yet. If you go after people that are having financial trouble, there's probably a better chance that they're going to get in contact with you because there's probably a better chance that they're having trouble making their mortgage payments and they need to get out from under their house. Or maybe you contact people that are going through a divorce. People going through a divorce often have to sell their house. That might be part of the settlement agreement. It just might be part of their life. Things are happening in their life and they just want to sell the house. Or people that are going through a job change. Or if somebody dies and their family inherits the house, you can contact the heirs because there's a good chance that they're going to want to sell that house at some point. So these are all the types of people that are what we call motivated to sell. They have some level of motivation, either because of family situations, job situations, or financial situations. They're more likely to pick up the phone and call you if you contact them. So you can find these people. There are lists out there of people that are in foreclosure. There are plenty of public records about people that are going through divorce, people that have died, and estates that are going through probate. Lots of public information on how you can find these types of people. Then it's a question of how do you contact them. You can pick up the phone and you can cold call them. You can literally just say, hi, my name is so-and-so. I was thinking of buying a house in your neighborhood. Now, maybe you know they're in like foreclosure or heading towards foreclosure. You don't want to bring that up, but you can just say, hey, if you thought about selling your house, if they're 2 or 3 or 4 months behind on their mortgage, they might think, oh, wow, this is a perfect call to get right now. Yeah, I'm thinking about selling my house. Can you help me? Or maybe you send direct mail, like I said, you send them letters or postcards that basically say, hey, I've noticed that you're behind on your mortgage payments. I help people like you by buying their house and paying off their loan for them. I can get this closed in the next 3 weeks. It's easier than facing foreclosure, yada, yada, yada. You can do billboards. You can do advertising. You can do what are called bandit signs. I'm sure everybody's seen those signs driving down the street that say, we buy ugly houses, or I want to buy your house. Call this phone number. A lot of areas, those aren't legal. You'll get in trouble for putting those signs out, but people still do it. People staple signs to trees and telephone poles. There are lots of ways to get your message in front of potential sellers. But the key here is that you're putting your message in front of sellers that haven't yet decided to sell or haven't yet taken action to try and sell their house. That way you don't have the competition with 10 or 15 or 50 other investors to buy that house. It's just you and the seller trying to work out or negotiate a deal.
It's all about cutting down on the competition so that you're the only one looking at the deal. And people don't realize that it's expensive and it's time consuming to sell a house. You're paying 6% to a realtor. You're listing, you're doing all the things to get your house ready. Getting an off-market deal sometimes is also beneficial for the seller.
Yeah, absolutely. People talk a lot about, well, why would a seller sell to you as opposed to just going to a real estate agent and putting it on the MLS? Because they'll probably get more money than if you want to buy it. If you're going to buy it as an investor, you're probably going to lowball them. And that's true. But there are some benefits to the seller who is in a bad financial situation or a bad personal situation or a bad employment situation. One, like you said, if they sell it to me, they don't have to pay the 6% to a realtor or to 2 realtors. So they're saving 6% right there. Number 2, if they put it on the MLS and they go through a typical closing, it could take 2 weeks to get on the MLS. It could take a couple weeks to get showings and get an offer. It can then take another 4 to 6 weeks to get to the closing table. It can take 2 or 3 months to sell your house that way, even in a good market. If I come in and offer to buy your house, I can close next week. I might be able to close in 7 or 10 days. So it allows the seller to get out much faster. And there's going to be a value to a lot of sellers to sell their house quickly and get out. Additionally, there are a lot of sellers, and this is something that a lot of people don't realize, but once you're in the business, you realize there are a lot of sellers who don't list their house for the simple reason that their house is cluttered or messy or dirty. A lot of hoarders out there that have a ton of stuff, and they are either terrified of people walking through their house because they're embarrassed or because they just don't want people walking through their house. They don't want to have to clean up. They don't want to have to deal with moving all their stuff out, all their trash and crap out when they move. When I go in, I say, look, I've seen plenty of houses worse than this. You don't have to clean up. I'm not going to walk through your house. I'm not going to disturb your stuff. We can stand at your front door or sit in your kitchen or whatever. You can come to me. I may want to walk through and take a couple really quick pictures, but I'm not going to do any inspections. And then when I buy your house, you can move out anything you want to leave, you can leave. If you want to leave the mounds of trash or all that old furniture or any other crap that you don't want to take with you, that's fine. Unlike a regular sale, you don't have to clean the house out and sweep it and get a cleaner in there before I buy it. I'll clean out anything you have left over. Don't worry about any of that. And so for a lot of sellers, just that peace of mind that nobody's going to be trouncing through their house. Nobody's going to be judging them because they're hoarders or because they're messy or because they haven't cleaned up. And nobody's going to force them to take all of their stuff out of there when they move. That can be worth a whole lot of money to people because it's a psychological barrier to listing your house with a real estate agent.
Yeah, it's a psychological thing. And it's amazing how emotional all of this is.
Yeah.
People think it's numbers. And I'm a pro forma guy. I'm like you. I analyze the numbers 10 different ways. I'm analyzing them out to 60 months.
Yep.
But it comes down to having a connection with somebody to make them want to sell their house to you, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, one of the best stories that we tell is back in 2000, it was probably 10 or 11, we get a call on a Sunday morning from our closing attorney who's taking a walk with his dog and his wife through his neighborhood. And he calls us and he said, I just walked past this house. They're having an estate sale. I was talking to the woman that's running the estate sale. Apparently her mom died a couple of weeks ago and they're just selling stuff. And I asked him if they're thinking about selling the house. And she said, yeah, I may sell it at some point. It's a great house. It's in our neighborhood. You guys might want to come take a look. So within 5 minutes, we had loaded up the car and we had driven a half hour up to that neighborhood. My wife starts talking to this woman and turns out her mom died a few weeks ago. She's selling stuff in the house, just trying to get things cleaned out. They talk for about an hour. At the end of the conversation, my wife says, so have you thought about selling the house? The woman says, I'm not there yet. I mean, my mother just died. I haven't gotten the house cleaned out. I just can't think about that yet. And my wife said, no problem. If and when you decide you want to sell, if there's anything I can help you with, she didn't say, I want to buy it. She said, if there's anything I can help you with, just let me know. The woman said, no problem. I think this was August time frame-ish. I think it was late summer. And so a couple months go by, January comes and goes. End of January, my wife comes to me and she said, do you remember that house that we saw back in Bo and Susie's neighborhood, our closing attorney's neighborhood? And I said, yeah. And she said, well, they're ready to sell. I'm like, wow, that was like 6 or 7 or 8 months ago. What happened? And she said, well, I've been keeping in touch with the woman. Like we just email occasionally, and I sent her a Christmas card or a New Year's card basically saying, thinking of you. I know it must be tough having your first Christmas without your mom. I'm so sorry. I hope you're doing well. And she picked up the phone and she called my wife and she said, thank you so much. I got your card. By the way, I think I'm ready to sell. What do I need to do? And my wife said, I can put you in touch with a good real estate agent. I can help you get the house cleaned out. I can help you get staged. I can help you like everything you need to do. Or if you just want a quick deal, I can probably buy it from you. I can make you an offer. If it doesn't work for you, I'll help you go the whole listing it route. And she said, no, I would love to sell it to you guys. You guys have been so good to me. I'm ready to be done with it at this point. And so they talked for a little while, negotiated a deal. 2 weeks later, we had purchased the house. And it wasn't that she couldn't have gotten more money for it. It wasn't that she didn't want people walking through the house. It wasn't that she didn't feel like cleaning it out. She would have done all that stuff. She would have been happy to pay the commission. But for her, there was this emotional bond with my wife. My wife had been there and had talked to her and helped her and been willing to listen. And for this woman, it wasn't about the money. It was just about she had hit the point where she was ready to sell the house. We happened to be there. She trusted us. She knew us. She knew my wife. And she sold it to us.
And the great thing is that Carol was ready to help her put it on the market and help her get the best deal for herself as well. If you're genuinely interested in helping people and adding value first, it's so amazing what will happen.
That is the key. I can't tell you the number of times that we have helped somebody and we've gotten nothing in return. And for us, that isn't a loss. That's a win. We do this because obviously we like to make money. We want to get the houses. We want to build our business and grow our business. But we also do this because we like helping people. And if we deal with 10 people and we get one deal and 9 people, we don't get a deal, but we're able to help them, that to us is just as big of a win as if we got 10 deals because we've helped 9 people. And as long as we're able to make some money, again, we don't want to help people for free our entire lives. That's not going to allow us to put food on our table. But as long as we can like eat and put it and get enough deals out of it, we're happy to help people and not make anything from it because it's just the benefit of helping people. And the more people you help, the more it's going to come back to you and help you as well.
I love everything about that. So I noticed that around 2013, the first 50 deals were in the books for you and Carol. Tell us now, if you wouldn't mind, kind of where you're at and what you have been able to build and how much property you're holding. I think my listeners would love to hear about that.
Yeah. So the big thing to know is I'm tremendously lazy. Most people think that, and I work hard but my wife would tell you I'm a really lazy person. I don't like to work hard. I don't like risk. I don't like being awake at night because I'm worried about stuff. So typically speaking, I'm going to look for the easiest way to make money in any market, any situation, any location. So from 2008 to around 2013, we did the flipping thing. It was easy, low risk. We were doing high volume. Around 2013, it kind of got a little bit difficult to do the flipping thing. So we started buying rentals in 2012, 2013. 2013, it got easier to start doing new construction and finding like what are called infill lots, so just individual lots in existing neighborhoods and areas, and building new construction. So around 2013, 14, we started building spec houses. 2016, those got difficult, but there was a lot of opportunity in the mid-sized multifamily space, so in the 10 to 60 unit space. So we started buying mid-sized multifamily. Then that started to get tough, but lending became a good opportunity like in 2018, 19. So for the last couple of years, we've been doing a bunch of lending. Basically, we keep changing our business based on where we're living, what the market, where we are in the market cycle, what the market is providing, what our location is providing. We're always looking for the low-hanging fruit, the easy way to make money. And so for us, our business has gone through a lot of changes over the last 10 years. But we've done a little bit of everything at this point. In terms of what we're holding, we actually sold off a bunch of our rentals last year. I probably sell too much and don't hold enough. It's again, my wife. It's one of the big things that she yells at me for, and she's absolutely right. I like locking up that profit. It feels good going to sleep at night thinking, okay, I have a big pile of cash that I just deposited in the bank today. But let me tell you something. As soon as I do that, or 2 months later, or 6 months later, I look back and I regret doing that. I would have rather held the asset. So we probably held over the years 150, 200 units. And of those, we've sold off most of them in the past year because the market's kind of hit a peak. A lot of them have been like B-class residential that I think is likely to get hit harder during the next downturn. We're still holding some of our C-class residential because I think C-class is going to be a lot more recession resistant. But we've sold off a lot of our stuff over the last couple of years. We're sitting on a lot of cash. We're doing a lot of lending. These days, we're looking at things like mobile home parks. We're looking at some C-class, multifamily, larger stuff that we think is going to hold up well during a recession. I know you do a lot of self-storage, which I think is a fantastic asset class for where we are in the market cycle. Mm-hmm. That'll do great during a recession. But one of the big pieces of advice I would give to anybody that's listening is anytime you want to sell something, think twice. I mean, it's often a good decision to sell something, but a lot of times I think a lot of investors, they make that rash decision to sell because they like to lock in the profit. But once you lock in the profit, you're also locking in the taxes. And a lot of times you're going to look back and you're going to say, damn, I wish I was still holding that cash flowing asset because it's going to appreciate over time. It's going to provide cash flow every month. And it's better to have cash flow than a bunch of cash sitting in the bank wondering what you're going to do with it.
Yeah, what stands out to me about what you just said is that you're an opportunist, and you're not one-dimensional. You're not stuck on doing one thing and doing it really well. You're looking at the market and trying to scope out opportunities, figuring out what makes the most sense for you and your situation, and you're adjusting as you go.
Yeah, but I will say one thing because I don't want to give the wrong impression there. People hear that and they think, okay, well then I'm going to go. Jay Scott said I need to learn how to flip houses and do rentals and mobile homes and multifamily and lending and notes. And okay, I'm going to go learn all of that stuff. That's not what I'm saying. I'm a big believer in focusing and getting really good at something and not moving on to the next thing until you've gotten really good at whatever it is. I spent a lot of time learning how to flip houses. years before I moved into the rental space. And then I spent a bunch of time doing rentals. And then I spent a bunch of time doing new construction. And when I was doing flipping, that's all I was doing. When I was doing rentals, that's all I was doing. When I was doing new construction, that's pretty much all I was doing. Then when I got into notes and lending, that's been pretty much all I've been doing, with the exception of the stuff that's building on the stuff I've done in the past. I'm never trying to learn 2 or 3 or 4 things at once. I try and learn one thing at a time,
Yep.
get good at it, add it to my arsenal, and then move on to the next thing. And so I probably missed some opportunities. There's probably been some note opportunities and lending opportunities back in 2012, 13, 14. In fact, I know I missed a lot of distressed note opportunities back 5 and 6 and 7 years ago, but that's not what I was focused on back then. I picked one thing back then and I focused on that, and it wasn't until I got good at that I went on to the next thing. So
I agree with that 100%. It's all about getting really good, and just I was more highlighting the evolution of a career and how a career can change, and how you can really kind of be dynamic and shift what you're doing as things change. So how do you feel about passive income? I know that's just it's a word that some people say there is no such thing as passive income. Other people say that it's the holy grail and what every business owner should go after. I mean, is there any advice that you can give somebody on searching for passive income?
Yeah, it's one of those things that I can say it, and the people that have already thought about it and are doing it are gonna say, yeah, amen. And the people that haven't done it and haven't thought about it are gonna listen and then write it off and ignore me until it hits them in some other way. I was that way for a long time. Again, I flipped houses, and it never occurred to me from 2008 to 2013 that I should be building up a passive portfolio, a rental portfolio, or a note portfolio, or a multifamily portfolio, or a self-storage portfolio, or a mobile home portfolio, something that I can hold and that will generate cash flow every month. And it wasn't until around 2013 that I sat down and I realized, wow, I've made a whole lot of cash from flipping houses, but I missed a huge opportunity to plow that cash into really cheap rental properties that could be paying me every month and allow me to literally retire. I mean, if you think about it, you take that money from flipping, you put it into rentals, at some point you can stop flipping houses. And what I was doing was I was plowing that money back into the business, into this active business. I was flipping more houses. I was doing some
It was a service business. You were in the service business.
100%. People talk about flipping houses as investing. Flipping houses isn't investing. Flipping houses is a 9-to-5 job. And it's a really hard 9-to-5 job. Now, it can be a good paying 9-to-5 job, but it's a really hard 9-to-5 job that incurs a whole lot of taxes. So don't think of flipping houses as kind of the holy grail of investing. Flipping houses is really just a job. And at some point you're going to have to take that money, just like whether you're making that money from consulting or a 9-to-5 job or a small business or flipping houses. At some point you have to take that cash and you have to put it into something that's going to pay you every month without you doing a lot of work. If you don't do that, you're never going to be able to retire. And for a lot of us, that's the key. For a lot of us, the key is we want to free up our time. I don't want to speak for other people, but for me, this has always been about freeing up my time. The reason my wife and I quit our corporate jobs is because we wanted freedom of time. We wanted to be able to spend time with our kids. We wanted to be able to travel. We wanted to be able to do what we wanted to do when we wanted to do it. And what we found was, from flipping houses in 2008 through whenever, we didn't have nearly as much time as we had hoped we would have. And it wasn't until 5, 6, 7 years after we started in this business that it hit us that if we can get this passive income, if we can plow our money into something that just pays us every month, that's true freedom of time. If I go on vacation right now and if we just go travel to Europe for the next month, I'm going to get all the same checks as if I'm sitting here writing another book or flipping houses. I mean, that passive income is going to come in no matter what I'm doing. And so the more of it I can build, the less I have to spend my time working. And so, yeah, I'm a big fan of passive income. I'm a big fan of taking as much as you can take and just plowing it back into cash flowing assets.
That's a great thought process on it. And part of the thing is, you got to work early on. You got to sweat early on to get there. And you know, one of the reasons why flipping houses has become so hard is because of the lack of contractors, the lack of skilled tradespeople, the lack of people who I'm trying to promote that type of business of get out, work with your hands, sweat, offer a service. bank your cash, and then go into real estate down the road. So yeah, any thoughts on that? And then I'll move on to wrap this thing up.
Yeah. So I would just say that instead of thinking about, I get a lot of people that say to me, hey, should I be flipping houses or doing rentals or something else? I want people to think about this a little bit differently. There's rarely a choice between should I be flipping houses or doing rentals. The real choice is, what should I be doing to generate active income? What should I be doing to generate passive income? And the key here is that there's something that right now you're trading your time for, that you're doing every day to generate a whole bunch of cash. And that could be working a 9-to-5 job. That could be flipping houses. That could be you're a consultant. That could be you're a contractor. You have a small business. Whatever it is that you're doing, something you're trading your time for money for, that is your active income. Then you should be taking that active income and you should be putting it into investments, passive investments. Those passive investments could be the stock market. They could be dividend paying stocks. They could be bonds. They could be, you could buy art. You could buy collectibles, or you could buy something like rentals or self-storage or mobile homes or multifamily. Basically, your passive income. So instead of thinking, should I be flipping houses or should I be buying rentals? The question is, what should I be doing for active income? And flipping houses is one example of something you can be doing for active income. And what should I then be taking all of that active income and putting it into to generate passive income? And rental houses is a good example of something you can do for passive income. So instead of saying flipping or rental, it's, should I be doing flipping, or should I have a full-time job, or should I be a contractor, or should I be a consultant, or should I have a small business? And then should it be rentals, or should it be stocks, or should it be bonds, or should it be collectibles, or should it be some other passive income? And so those are really the questions you should be asking, not flipping or rentals. It's what am I doing for active income? What am I doing for passive income? And like you said, for all those people right now that are thinking about flipping houses, if that's what you want to do for active income, you should ask yourself, is there something better? Maybe being a contractor is a better opportunity right now than flipping houses. So if that's how you want to generate, if you want to spend 40 hours a week flipping houses, maybe you should spend 40 hours a week being a contractor, being a carpenter, being an electrician, if that's what you're good at, because that might be an easier way to make money, and then take that active income and plow that into rental houses and use real estate as your passive investing source, not necessarily both your active and your passive.
That's exactly the story of my career so far. The first 8 years were spent building the service business that made us enough cash to then get into self-storage.
Yep.
and start to do real estate along those lines. So any last thoughts on what it takes to be successful? I know, Jay, you make hundreds of decisions every day. You're going to lend to this person. You're not going to lend to that person, especially back when you were flipping houses and you literally had decisions coming at you from all angles. How do you get better at making good decisions and kind of keeping the emotional side out of it? I mean, I'm all about, on the Sweaty Startup, we understand that your life is just a series of the decisions that you've made. Yep. So you have to get better at making decisions, thinking logically about them. How do you frame some really hard decisions that you make, or even the small ones?
The answer to this is the easiest question that you'll ask me today, but it's also the hardest thing to do. It's surrounding yourself with really good people. Because I surround myself with people who are smarter than I am, my wife, my project managers, a lot of my contractors, everybody I surround myself with, my mentors, they're all smarter than I am, or at least they're smarter than I am in the areas that they're smarter than I am. So they all have some area that they're a lot smarter than I am. And so I don't try and make hundreds of decisions a day. I try and delegate hundreds of decisions a day. If I have to make a decision about rehabbing a house, I'm going to go to the person that knows more than I do about rehabbing the house, whether it's my project manager or one of my contractors or one of my vendors, and let them make the decision. If it's something to do with marketing or sales, my wife is a whole lot smarter than I am. So instead of making those decisions, I'm going to go to her and I'm going to let her make that decision. If there's a financial decision that needs to be made, I'm going to go to my accountant or maybe my banker or my lender or somebody else and let them make that decision. I've got a guy that helps me with my underwriting. So if I have to make an underwriting decision to decide if I should make a loan, I'm not making that decision necessarily. I'm going and I'm letting him make that decision. My job is to figure out what decisions need to be made, to delegate it out, to then bring that information back and execute on it. So most of my job is not decision making. Most of my job is figuring out what decisions need to be made, and then executing on them when other people make the decisions. And that's how I deal with that. And so what I would tell anybody that's thinking of starting out, the most important thing is to surround yourself with really, 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 really smart people who are better than you are at everything you need to do. I see too many people that say, I don't want to do this alone, so I'm going to get a partner. And what they do is they go find somebody that is exactly like them. They have the same strengths, they have the same weaknesses, they have the same level of experience, they have the same background, they have the same connections, and they run in the same circles. How does that help you? Basically, it's just another copy of yourself. When you have to do something you're good at, you don't need them because you're good at it. When you have to do something you're bad at, they're not going to help you because they're bad at it too. So surround yourself with people who are different than you, smarter than you, do different things than you, people that you trust to make those decisions that you're not necessarily going to want to make yourself.
That's amazing advice, but the hardest part, like you said, is recognizing that.
Yep.
It's recognizing that you don't know it all, especially after some wins, right? You and Carol have had a lot of success. You've had a lot of good decisions that you have made, a lot of things that you can say, I did that.
Yep.
Now you're recognizing that, okay, I need to have an open mind. I need to realize that some other people may be smarter than I am. And taking your ego out of it and recognizing that is one of the hardest things to do. It makes so much sense when you sit here and say that, but actually putting it in practice is so, so difficult.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's hard to admit when you don't know something. It's hard to admit that people are smarter than you. But you use the word, it's ego. And if you want to be good in this business or any business, and you know this as well as anybody because you've started a business that's bigger than most people on this planet, you need to relinquish that ego if you're going to be successful. And if it's going to be about ego, then what you're going to find is that you're limiting yourself, you're limiting your business, you're limiting your success.
Yep. It's about searching for what is right and not caring who figured that out.
Exactly.
That's the hardest part. That's the hardest part. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate any last words of advice for somebody who is starting to get real estate on the radar. Where can they learn more about you, Jay, and any parting words here?
Yeah, I'd say go to BiggerPockets.com. That's literally where I learned when I got into real estate, and I jumped on the internet to find out all about this flipping thing. I went to BiggerPockets.com, and I've been part of that community for over a decade now. If you want to check out my website, 123flip.com. If you want to check out my podcast that, Nick, you were a guest on just a few weeks ago, my wife and I host the BiggerPockets Business podcast. You can find that on iTunes or anywhere that you listen to your podcasts. And I have 4 books on flipping and estimating and negotiating and investing throughout different parts of the economic cycle. So feel free to check out my books if you're interested in those.
Yep. And I'll link to all that stuff in the show notes. Thank you so much, Jay, for all the work that you do. Thanks for having me on BiggerPockets. By the way, you get some real big wigs on that show. So it's looking good on my resume now that you interviewed me. So I just appreciate all the work you're doing. I think you're making a really big difference. And I know it's kind of a pain to take your time out to come talk to a few service-based entrepreneurs, but it really makes a difference for a lot of people. So we really appreciate what you're working on.
Oh no, this is fantastic. And all the people that have been there to help me and my wife throughout, I'm always happy to give back.
Thanks so much. Talk soon.
Thanks, Nick.